And also this, the political activist Femi Oluwole has caused some outrage on social media after questioning why BBC presenters are wearing poppies. Writing on Twitter, Femi quoted the BBC charter that said, "Rules ban virtue signalling no matter how worthy the cause." He continued, "If presenters can support war-related campaigns on the news, surely they can show belief in equality for black and gay people. Or is this against BBC values?" Femi Oluwole joins us now. How are you, sir?
Not too bad. Yourself?
I'm all right. So what's going? I thought I saw this at about 5:30 this morning. I nearly fell out my own bed when I saw this, Femi, because I thought this is. I mean, partly because of what you'd written, and then partly because, of course, and you must have expected it. You've your shoulders are broad on these things these days, but you do get a fair amount of stick on social media, and this was no exception.
No, it was kind of weird to see that on the day of the U.S. elections, the top three things trending were America, Election Day, and Femi, which was a little funny to see.
That's all right though, isn't it? You can say that. If you're not being talked about, Femi, there's the problem. But I did look. Let me cut to the chase. I saw this and I thought, actually, you've got this horribly wrong, and I'll tell you why you've got it horribly wrong. Because wearing a poppy does not show a political affiliation, and wearing a badge that says Black Lives Matter does. So just on those two examples, you're wrong.
No, it doesn't. Black Lives Matter is the principle that Black Lives Matter. That's what it is.
Well, everyone agrees with that.
The narrative that's being pushed that suggests that Black Lives Matter is more about some organization than it is about the basic principle of racial equality is being pushed by people who want to undermine the push for racial equality because that organization is flawed, whereas the fight for racial equality is a perfect principle and isn't flawed. So you choose the weaker.
I don't know anybody who doesn't want racial equality. I mean, there's bound to be some loons out there who don't want it, but I mean, Black Lives Matter. Yeah, do young kids' lives matter? Do old people's lives matter? I know they're not the same campaigns, by the way, and I'm not trying to draw a full equivalence. But the point I'm making is that bit is obvious. But Black Lives Matter is a massive global campaign political organisation.
You say it's obvious. We live in a country where black people are stopped and searched by police 10 times more than white people. We live in a country where Oxford research shows that if you've got a Nigerian-sounding name, you have to send 80% more job applications to get a job offer. So it's not obvious to everybody. That's why the campaign exists, is the push for racial equality.
But that's not what Black Lives Matter, the organisation, is about, of course.
What I just said, that those who push to say that Black Lives Matter is more about that organization, who I personally have condemned.
You can't separate the two. You can't have an organization called Black Lives Matter and then when a newsreader wears a badge saying Black Lives Matter, you can't say, oh, they probably just mean the principle of the slogan as distinct from the campaigning Marxist organization. You can't have
Are you aware of the distinction between small C conservative and large C conservative?
Sure.
What's the distinction?
Yeah, I get the distinction, but that's not the point, is it?
What is the distinction?
What do you mean, what is the distinction? Somebody who happens to be a member of the party and somebody who happens to have conservative values, there is a distinction.
And especially given that right now that's a great example.
I'm sorry, Black Lives Matter is the name of a massive global Marxist political organisation, Femi. You can't separate that.
Again, I personally had not been on their side. By the way,
and it was never used. It was never used as a racial slogan to advance equality up until probably this year in any significant.
That's form. Not true. That is simply not true.
In any significant form, I said.
This is the problem. Right now you are talking to somebody who's been pushing for racial equality since he started politics, and you're telling me
Femi, it's your job,
Black Lives Matter didn't exist before this year.
I didn't say that. I said it didn't exist in its significant form as it did from this year.
It may not be significant to you because to you Black Lives Matter may have just started with George Floyd. For many of us, it's been a long time.
No, you're confusing my words. I'm not talking about the campaign for racial equality. I'm talking about the campaign for racial equality utilizing the phrase Black Lives Matter was not used significantly until this year. But distinguish
that's simply a lie. Hang on, let me just Google it because I've got Google open right now.
I'm happy you've got your Google with you, Femi. You might need it for a few other things in a moment, so get your history out as well because
Matter. Let's go with.
What do you got there? Shall I Google it this end as well? This is like playing virtual battleships, isn't it? E5. There you go. What have you got? What's yours there? Black Lives Matter. Oh, your name's come up, Femi. Says you're on talkRADIO at the moment. There you go. What about that? Listen, while you're Googling, I'm sure you can multitask. Just tell me why you're drawing a correlation, though, with the poppy, because, of course, the poppy is not political. The poppy is about remembrance. The poppy is a campaign to have a moment's silence and a day and the days leading up to Remembrance Day to remember those who have fallen. There's nothing political about that. If I wear the poppy, you don't know what my politics are.
Define what you mean by political. What does political mean?
Well, you don't know what my politics are if I wear a poppy. If I wear
what do you mean by politics?
You know what I mean by politics, Femi.
No. This is the point.
Listen, I know you've adapted this vibe in your media training, which you probably Googled as well, to always try and throw a question back to the interviewer, which works fine if it's a good question. But it's not a good question because you know the answer already, what I mean by that.
Hear my point. The principle that black people and white people should be equal shouldn't be political at all because it's not up for debate. Politics usually concerns things
only
people
a
have arguments
supercharged
about.
Idiot wouldn't know that. That doesn't mean to say there aren't huge areas of work to be done. Again, only an idiot wouldn't know that either. But I'm asking you about the poppy. The poppy, of course, does not define my allegiances politically or in terms of areas I'd like to campaign on. It doesn't define anything but my wanting to wear something.
A poppy says that you respect the people who've given their lives to save the lives of this country, to protect our freedoms. That is a principle of values. You are stating your values there. You feel it's important that we look after veterans. You feel it's important that we show respect to those who've fallen on our behalf. That is a set of values. Just like saying that I believe black and white people should be equal.
But there's no equivalence. No, there isn't, because
why?
Because in terms of somebody wearing the poppy, Femi, it is clearly been decided over 100 years that there would be a remembrance for people who have fallen in battle and the families that are left behind. It doesn't cut as deeply as saying that I think this because I have certain values. It says that because I'm a human being. Now, if you were wearing...
Yeah. That's the thing. That's the thing. If you don't think it's part of an innate humanity to believe that Black Lives Matter, that's the problem.
Nobody disputes that.
People who are saying that it's wrong of me to equate the two things, they're exposing their own prejudices.
No, there's no prejudice in that. The problem is, for Black Lives Matter, is that it happens to also be the name of a campaigning organisation.
I've just looked up. There are hits on Black Lives Matter from as far back as 2013. Those are the first ones I'm seeing.
No, I didn't say it's never been used. I first debated this probably in about 2011, I think. I spoke to one of the people in the States who began the organisation, explained what it was all about. I spoke to some black campaigners in the States who explained why this was a highly dangerous, inflammatory, divisive organisation. And there's the reason why it should be treated with real care.
Right now, you are talking to a black person who has campaigned on this issue of Black Lives Matter. I have personally condemned that organization, yet you are telling me that by supporting Black Lives Matter...
So you can't really... I mean, if I start an organization called the Poppy Appeal, but actually what I stand for is killing ferrets, I mean, I think you would probably say, well, you can't really call it the Poppy Appeal, can you? Because there's already a Poppy Appeal.
Black Lives Matter was a cause before it was an organization.
Well, of course it was, in its rawest sense of the words, but you cannot...
Yes.
There's nothing... But it was never a mantra. It was never a slogan. It was never...
It was. It always has been. That's why they chose the name.
It demonstrably hasn't been.
If I set up a conservative party and said it was just about killing squirrels, would that suddenly automatically change the meaning of what it means to be a conservative? No.
I have never heard.
Racial equality is a principle that stands on
I
its
have
own.
never heard. Nobody disputes the fact that the words in that chronological order, Black Lives Matter, have been. Of course, they've been used. But in terms of whether they have been symbolic of the wider organisation for racial equality and the inequalities that you rightly outline in things like housing and job and stop and search, etc., that nobody would disagree with. I think it would be disingenuous, Femi, to suggest they have been applied with the same vigour and regularity as they have been in the last year.
In the last year, it's blown up because of George Floyd, because that's one of the most acute examples that we've seen in recent times of the racial inequality. The fact that a police officer felt he could do it, but it is
well, we
all
haven't. No,
part
sorry.
of the same
Let me
thing.
just pick you up on that point. We have no idea whether there's any racial component to the killing of George Floyd at all.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay. So.
What do you mean? Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear.
Unarmed black people are killed.
We have no idea. Listen.
3 times more by
But we can play the statistics game. Blacks
people.
make up 13% of the population in America, responsible for 50% of crime. You can play that game all day long, and it can get very ugly. I don't want to play that game with you, Femi. I want to play the game with the moment as it stands. There's not been a court case.
If you want to play that game, if you want to play that game. So, in the UK, black people are stopped and searched by police 10 times more. I know,
and you could say that, and you'll get no disagreement from it.
Yeah, also, a research by the Majesty's Constabulary for Fire Services and Police shows that white people, when stopped and searched, white people are carrying drugs more than black people. So it's not just that black people are going to be stopped and searched more; it's they're unfairly and unjustifiably stopped and searched more.
But then you can counter that and get into knife crime. You can get into your chances of encountering the police and how that increases the amount of times you're likely to get pulled over. I'm not talking about that. I am with you. I am with you on the broad.
Live in poorer areas.
Indeed, and I am with you on all of those issues.
And that is partly because of the systemic racism I mentioned in terms of job applications.
And
you can back it back and forth. But the fact is, systemic racism exists.
Yes.
And the BBC, an organization that took 2 weeks to apologize for saying the N-word on a news broadcast, is not exactly the most progressive organization. So I called it out.
I mean, in fairness, the context of that wasn't that they wheeled that out because they thought it was a clever word. They wheeled it out because the reporter clearly felt that journalistically she wanted to give it the power that it deserved in a question. I wouldn't have used it, and they probably shouldn't have used it.
Let me ask you a question.
I don't think it was done for nefarious reasons.
If they used the F word in a news broadcast, how long do you reckon it would have taken them to apologize?
Well, I don't think the F word is. I think it was being deliberate. The N word, I think, was deliberately put in to show how awful it was, but it was clearly still editorial.
You can say that with the F word. How long would it take them to use the F word? How long would it take them to apologise for using the F word? So you think
the BBC, which, believe me, I worked a long time at the BBC. We spoke many times, Femi, when I was on there, and the idea that they didn't take it down because of some, it's only the N word, doesn't really matter, would be lunacy. Take me back to Poppies.
Sorry, they refused for 2 weeks to apologise. How long would it taken them?
Well, because
it would have taken them about 3 seconds to apologise.
Because there would have been
the N word they found legitimate.
Because they didn't find it legitimate as in acceptable. They think they found it editorially relevant, and there was a debate on whether or not it should be kept in. There are some documentaries where you will hear it, and you'll hear it flagged beforehand that there's a warning that goes with it.
Would you have the F word used in a news broadcast? Yes or no?
I'd rather not have any words that are likely to upset somebody used in a news broadcast. But you're
hearing exactly what I'm saying. They found the F word is more offensive to the BBC than the N word. That is the logical conclusion of those facts.
No, it's not the logical. It's the logical conclusion if that's what you want to think, Femi. There could be other reasons for it. There could be other factors.
The fact that you don't broadcast. Would they apologise immediately?
But
yes.
Did
they apologise immediately with this?
But
no.
That is absolutely not the equivalence that should be drawn, because that isn't the reason why they decided to include that word. And that journalist, of course, probably wishes she'd never kept it there in the first place. That's an issue of the BBC. You're wearing your poppy, I see.
Yeah.
Are you wearing anything else?
Clothes? Boxers?
Yeah, I'm talking. Well, I'm glad to hear you got your boxers on for a start. I'm talking about in terms of political slogans, Femi.
Right now, no.
Oh. Not to worry. Thank you, Femi Oluwole. It's always good to have a to and froing on issues of the day, and today it comes down to Poppies. He thinks the BBC are at double standards for allowing journalists to wear poppies, but not allowing journalists to wear Black Lives Matter symbolism. I explained my reasons why I think he's got that wrong. He explained his, and then we got into all sorts of other territory. But that's what an interview with Femi looks like, everybody. 0344 499 1000. It's Ian Collins on Talk Radio.